Ohio State returns to Ohio Stadium for its only home game of October in a matchup against Minnesota for its second Big Ten game of the season as a 23.5-point favorite. I'm Steven, that's Stefan, and that's Andrew, and these are our game scores. Stefan, you teased this for people who are listening to this through Buckeye Talk. If not, go listen to Buckeye Talk wherever you find podcasts. That maybe you were picking Ohio State to shut out the Golden Gophers. Is that maybe a yes or a no? What's your game score?
The answer is a no. I'm going Ohio State wins 35-3. I respect Drake Lindsey and this Minnesota offense enough to think that maybe they put a drive together to get points on the board, or maybe Ohio State makes a mistake and Minnesota gets the ball in plus territory and they can get some points on the board. But I don't think this is a game where we see Ohio State give up a touchdown. I think they'll stay perfect in terms of red zone defense and allowing no touchdowns. And I think if my math is right, they've only given up 2 touchdowns on the season total. One to Texas on a passing play from outside the red zone, and one to Ohio, the big play down the middle of the field. So I think this Ohio State offense has an opportunity to kind of throw it around a bit more and look better than they did against Washington or Texas earlier this year. I think they're going to be a bit more aggressive in the passing game, and I think they're going to be a bit more aggressive in the red zone. The reason I'm going with 35 is because I don't think Ryan Day is going to settle for field goals in this game. I think that he knows he can take some risks and take some chances. So if there's 4th and 2, 4th and 3, maybe even 4th, 5, 6, situations in plus territory, I think Ohio State's going to go for it. I think they're going to be aggressive and say, hey, we got to get this red zone offense going. We've talked all week about the goal being 75%. Sure, that's a lofty goal in terms of touchdown percentage from red zone drives, but it's what they strive for. Now, if you end up at 70 for the season, you can live with that, right? They're at 65 right now, though, and they want to be at least a touch above that. So I think Ohio State's going to be aggressive and try to iron out some wrinkles that it has, specifically with the red zone offense. And I think they'll be successful. We talked about it on Buckeye Talk, the struggles for this Minnesota red zone defense. So it's something's got to give here, and I think Ohio State's going to be the team that succeeds. So I got the Buckeyes 35, the Golden Gophers 3. I think it's going to be a long night at Ohio Stadium for PJ Fleck and company.
We have the same point total. We just divvied it out a little bit differently. Because I am going to pick Ohio State to shut out Minnesota. And I wasn't going to do it. My original game score was going to be 38-3. And then we spent 20 minutes talking about Minnesota and talking it through and coming to some realizations of where Minnesota struggles, Ohio State is dominant defensively. And they're great a lot of different places, but especially where Minnesota struggles, Ohio State is dominant. I don't think Drake Lindsey just doesn't have the weapons. PJ Fleck and Minnesota just don't have the weapons to be able to just pull off explosive plays. And you can't bank on what Ohio was able to pull off on that 67-yard touchdown where 2 guys just have a mind blip for a second, and so they get a 67-yard touchdown pass out of that. If you take that away, Ohio got a field goal out of the game on one quality drive. Minnesota gets quality drives, but they don't finish in the red zone. Ohio State has allowed 7 red zone trips all year, and they're the only team in the country who hasn't allowed a touchdown, and they didn't even give up field goals until last game. So I just talking it through, I'm finding it difficult for where Minnesota scores. Ohio State had 2 shutouts last year. They had one early in the year against Western Michigan, and they had one during the Big Ten schedule against Purdue at home. I think we see a similar situation this year where they already have one shutout against Grambling earlier in the year. I think if they're going to shut out an opponent at home this year, more than likely Minnesota has the best case of that. Maybe UCLA later down the road, but like right now, of the teams they're playing this month, I think they might shut out Minnesota simply because where Ohio State is dominant, Minnesota is very terrible. And then where Ohio State is just good, elite, very good, Minnesota is below average at best. I just think this is a product of stoppable object, immovable force. And as a result, the defense gives up no scores. And I'm with you, Stefan. I think they're going to air it out this game. I think they're going to get in the end zone a lot. I just think there might be one drive in this game where situationally it ends in a field goal. Maybe it's 2-minute drill and you get down to the 17-yard line and there's 3 seconds on the clock, so you're kicking it with Jaden Fielding. Or early in the game, they're driving, and as we've seen the last couple of games where they just not executing fully, so it ends in a field goal, or late in the game it ends in a field goal. But my score 38-0. Ohio State gets its fourth shutout in the last 2 years. Andrew, what's your game score?
Going a barn burner. 38-6. I don't think Minnesota's going to score a touchdown either. So I think what Stefan had 3 for Minnesota, I had 6, and Steven had 0. So we basically don't think Minnesota's going to score a touchdown. I think that's about right. If you remember the 23 game, Ohio State was up 37-0, and Minnesota kicked a field goal late. I think we're probably in for one of those where it's like, hey, Minnesota has one early, and then all of a sudden, they kick a field goal late, and all of a sudden they ruin a shutout, or they ruin, a 3-point performance or something like that. But yeah, this to me, I don't see a path for Minnesota really to keep it super close into the second half without some Ohio State errors. I look at this Ohio State defense and how awesome they are and how awesome they've been, and I'm like, you know what, I'm not there with Minnesota's running game. Especially if Darius Taylor's out. You guys, I think, are higher than me on Drake Lindsey. You guys are, really high on what he can be. I don't think you're wrong. I just think you're maybe early. I'm not there right now. I don't think that Lindsey is all that great right now. I think maybe let's have this conversation in 26 or 27, and we can be talking about Drake Lindsey as that type of guy that can, poke some holes in Ohio State's defense. I just don't think we're there yet. I think he's going to be overwhelmed. I think Minnesota's running game is going to be overwhelmed. And we talked about it. Their red zone defense is not great. Their red zone offense is even worse. I don't think that Minnesota has the goods to kind of keep this close. So they're a Big Ten team. I think they'll score a little bit. I think they'll kick 2 field goals. They'll be able to get on the board. They won't get shut out. But yeah, this is going to be one of those games, I think, where, you can kind of look at it, even if the game is 14-0 in the second quarter or at halftime or something like that, and go, yeah, this one's over. Yeah, it just this doesn't strike me as a close game. So Ohio State 38, Minnesota 6.
So we all have Ohio State covering, but we all also have the under.
Mm-hmm.
Are we, Andrew, you correctly picked the under last week, but you barely under last week. But kudos to you. You were under.
A win's a win, Steven.
Yeah, win's a win, man. The object is to win the game.
Yep.
Style points don't matter. Are we starting to all overcorrect now that we're seeing how Ohio State is handling games? And is that how we have all reached a point where we're all picking the under? And Andrew, you are a half point under. So we're all just kind of stretching it, but under is under, right? Have we all maybe adjusted our opinions and our perceptions on what this offense is going to do on a week in, week out basis? Not because of what it's capable of doing, but what they feel and deem is necessary to do to win a football game.
I have, I think partially because of the offensive thing, but I also am looking at Ohio State's defense too, and I'm going, okay, if the over under in this game is 44.5 right now, how much of that is Ohio State going to have to account for, right? I think in a normal defense, if you were to say, oh, this team, you could just give them a touchdown and a field goal, and that seems about right for what Ohio State to give up over the course of 8 or 9 possessions. And then you can probably kind of talk yourself into some overs. But I don't think Minnesota's going to score, and I don't know how many other defenses are going to score on this team. So I think it's a product of the offense, but I also just think it's a product of the defense being so good that teams know they have to score some points to beat Ohio State. And I think Ohio State's offense would have to account for the majority of it. So I put the under in a little bit.
Yeah, I think too, when we talk about Ohio State airing it out, I'm still a bit hesitant to think that, there's a full game where they just load up and they put up a 50 spot, a 60 spot against a Big Ten team. To me, air it out seems like take the Washington game, add a couple possessions and a couple possessions where they're a bit more aggressive. But I think once Ohio State gets out to a big enough lead, you'll probably see them pump the brakes a little bit and maybe conserve their bodies a bit and go back to the long-term approach that we've seen Ryan Day and the staff lean on a bit. So even when I say air it out, I will struggle with this offense because of their approach to go past 42 or 49 points scored in a Big Ten game. And I will say against Washington, I predicted Washington to score 21 points. I will not be doing that I will not be doing that often the rest of the season is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's going to be a while before I predict the team to score multiple touchdowns on Ohio State's defense when Scoring one touchdown seems
my brain broke trying to talk about Ohio State's defense there. I can't imagine what it's like for an offensive coordinator going up against Ohio State's defense.
I think I'm going to be sticking with unders for a little bit, especially when they're around the 40 range, 40 to 50 range, simply because, as you said, Andrew, how much of that is Ohio State going to account for? It's how many points does Ohio State have to score to win the football game? Right? Like, and it doesn't seem like they have to score a lot to win football games right now because of how good their defense is. They scored 14 points against Texas and won that game. They scored 24 points in 6 possessions, and they beat Washington, right? Do I think they need to score 45 plus points to beat Minnesota? Probably not. Do I think they need to score 45 points to beat Illinois or Wisconsin? Probably not. In fact, I don't think there's a game on the schedule left where I think they have to score more than 40 points to win the football game. Now, getting to the Big Ten championship game, you're playing Indiana, or you're playing Oregon, especially Oregon, who's got the weapons on the perimeter to keep up with you. That's a different conversation. But I don't think there's a team on the schedule anymore where, even if I think Ohio State could go out there and put 45 on anybody's head, do they need to? And if the answer is no, then they're not going to do that. And as a result, we're all taking the under. Get the text 614-350-3315. It's a 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. Those are our game scores. We're all picking Ohio State to cover, but also taking the under against Minnesota on Saturday night inside the shoe. If you're watching on YouTube, go check out the full podcast. Go wherever you find podcasts. Just look for Buckeye Talk. After the break, we're going to talk about some games around the country here on Buckeye Talk.